With tariffs looming, a supply of shelf-stable foods stocked away is a valuable safety net. These are the canned foods we expect to get hit the hardest. Whether you use them to make fresh salsa or simmer them down to a spaghetti sauce, you may want to buy a supply of canned tomatoes before prices increase. Tomatoes may grow easily in the backyard gardens of the US, but grocery store tomatoes are frequently imported from countries like Mexico and Canada. And by frequent, we mean 99% of 2024's tomatoes imported to the US came from our neighbors to the north and south. Currently, Mexico's tomatoes are due for a nearly 21% tariff starting July 14, 2025, while Canada's crops are slated for a 25% increase if things go as planned. So these popular items could be one of the first casualties of the tariff wars. One way you can save on tomatoes in the long term is to find a shop that sells smaller cans of unseasoned sauce at lower prices and buy a bunch of those. Each can will be less expensive than the larger alternatives, and this will also allow you to only use what you need without having unsealed leftovers to store or freeze. And it doesn't hurt to pick up a little variety in your canned tomatoes either. If you like the kind that comes with jalapenos and fire-roasted chilies, these could see extra price increases, as multiple types of produce in the same can could mean multiple tariffs. In 2024, the U.S. brought in over 1.3 billion kilos of pineapples from Mexico, Brazil, Costa Rica, and other regions, so your smoothies may suffer when the tariffs finally fall into place. Even worse, production in the States is actually projected to decline, and Pineapple King Dole is already raising prices to cope with supply issues. Limited domestic supplies of pineapples will just add insult to injury with the projected 10 to 25% tariffs. Mangoes imported from these same regions face the same duty-based increase, so something like a canned island mix could also see compounding price increases. And these increases will likely also extend to canned pineapple juice and tropical fruit nectars that use foreign-grown produce. So if you're big on vitamin C, you'd be wise to get your canned fruit collection sorted now, so that when the new tariff structure is in motion, you'll be living the high life. It won't save your wallet if you want to buy fresh pineapples in the future, but at least you won't go totally without tropical fruit. Depending on what you read, you may hear that corn prices are expected to drop in the US. Thanks to reduced exports to China and Mexico, it appears we have a surplus. Since farmers will be left with more corn than they can distribute and will probably be eager to offload it to canned vegetables producers, this seems like a logical conclusion. But if you dig a little deeper, you'll discover that there's a potential shift from corn to soybeans that could diminish corn growing in the States. Should this happen, we'll need to start importing, probably from countries where tariffs have been applied. Even if corn supplies stay stable and farmers find themselves able to continue growing their crops, a lot of the fertilizer they use is imported from Canada, so growers will still need to spend more just to keep their supply going. Add a 10% tariff on corn crops leaving the US, and the possibility of a price hike for canned corn looms heavy in the distance. So to be safe, we'd suggest grabbing some extra cans while prices are still predictable and relatively low. Your local grocery store may even carry multi-packs that can help reduce your costs even more. And if you don't think you'd ever use that much canned corn, just look up some recipes. They're practically endless and sometimes taste better than fresh corn.
I'm never gonna make a corn salsa from corn on the cob. I'm gonna totally choose a can whenever possible.
Considering that canned tuna is usually one of the more affordable items in the canned food section, you may think that your tuna fish sandwiches will always stay around the same price. But very little of the tuna used by the major American food canners actually comes from American fishermen, so we wouldn't count on it. In fact, about 80% of all seafood consumed in the US comes from imports, which puts your lunchtime tuna sandwich on the chopping block if and when tariffs finally take effect. It isn't only canned tuna that will be impacted by the turning tide of the tariff. Other canned fish like salmon, anchovies, and sardines are due to see their prices uplifted as well, as all those are also imported. If canned fish like these are staples in your cabinet, think about clearing off a little shelf space and buying some in bulk on your next shopping trip. That way, you won't have to worry when the trade wars take the canned fish sector underwater. Thanks to retaliatory tariffs inching ever higher, that can of nuts that you snack on throughout the week may set you back upwards of 25% more than you're used to paying. A Phase 2 list of items due to be hit with retaliatory tariffs from Canada include hazelnuts, almonds, pistachios, and walnuts. When similar items were caught up in a US-imposed tariff standoff in 2018, the tree nut industry saw losses upwards of $239 million. And while we don't know how high that number could climb this time, one thing is certain: consumers will be the ones footing the bill. The good news is that nuts are frequently put on sale by major grocery chains in the US. So if you happen to see them at a discounted price on your next shopping trip, you'd have to be nuts not to stock up while they aren't at a premium. Better yet, head to your favorite warehouse outlet and buy in bulk. You can stash them in your freezer to extend the shelf life. While many beans that end up as canned goods are grown around farms in the US, it's definitely not all of them. Goya in particular imports around $30 million worth of agricultural products from Colombia every year, some of which end up as the company's canned black beans and refried beans. Many imported black beans come from Brazil as well, and both of those countries are facing a 10% tariff. And since Goya needs to pay more to get their beans on shelves, shoppers could definitely see a price increase when they go out to get a can for burrito night. And unfortunately, there aren't too many workarounds to accommodate the rising bean prices. While it may seem like a good idea to buy the oversized cans of refried beans when you see them, once they're opened, the beans inside will lose their freshness unless you use them quickly. So it wouldn't have the same effect as buying cans in bulk. You're better off searching for sales on regular-sized cans and estimating what you'll need for the next several months. Though there are many pros and cons to cooking with canned beans, it might be worth rounding up a nice little trove to keep Taco Tuesday at your current standard without taking out a reverse mortgage to cover the bill.
Cool beans?
Cool beans.
The humble olive keeps a relatively low profile in the canned goods section most of the year, but they get more popular around the holidays. But since olives in the US are imported from Europe and Mexico, buyers should beware that these savory stone fruits are set to get hit pretty hard by tariffs. Black olives already saw a 35% tariff-based price increase during the first Trump administration. And while the coming tariff would be smaller, it still stands to take a decent chunk out of your olive buying budget. So if you're a big olive eater, or your holiday spread just won't be the same without a bowl of green olives going around the table, consider doing your holiday food shopping a little early and stash a few jars and cans in the back of your cabinets. The best buy dates on these cans stretch pretty far into the future, so you should have no problem with freshness or taste for the next year or two at least. Plus, that could save you some cash you'll need for gifts and stocking stuffers.
Vodka martini straight up, 3 olives, please.
Since the start of the tariff wars, caffeine hounds have been waiting with bated breath to learn when the axe is going to fall on our favorite morning bean juice. Many of the coffee beans sold in the US are grown in countries that face a 10% tariff. Even worse, coffee grown in Vietnam, the second largest coffee producer on the planet, is going to face a whopping 46% tariff for beans. So there's no question that a price increase for your morning cup of joe is coming. It's just a matter of when. If you're a gourmet coffee fan, you may be used to buying your coffee in foil bags and might not even realize that brands like Folgers and Taster's Choice still sell most of their coffee in cans. But no matter how it comes packaged, it's looking like coffee is going to feel a lot less like a necessity and more like a luxury. So if you're looking for a way to get ahead of the curve, buying larger cans could be a cheaper way to keep greater quantities on hand without breaking the bank. Otherwise, we could be in for some seriously cataclysmic coffee inflation, and we don't really want to see the US population without their caffeine fix.
Is that seriously what those Starbucks in the QZ used to sell?
Cocoa is another imported item that shoppers take for granted. Cocoa beans are grown largely in the southern hemisphere, so we should be ready for certain sweets prices to skyrocket in the coming months. It's bad enough that candy bars and ice cream are sure to be seeing a price leap due to the trade contest and a potential 10% tariff, but the unsweetened cocoa powder home cooks rely on for their baked goods is in jeopardy too. And of course, cocoa powder also appears in canned products like hot chocolate mix. Nesquik and Ovaltine have made it easy for hot chocolate fans to mix up a batch whenever they want, but that could get pretty problematic when the tariffs are enacted. We can expect an increase of 10% on cocoa beans from Brazil and Ghana, 21% on Ivory Coast cocoa, 32% on beans from Indonesia, and the same 46% as coffee on imports from Vietnam. And like most other products on this list, these changes will almost surely mean elevated prices in stores. If you're looking to invest your shopping money wisely and keep your sweet tooth at bay, make sure you pick up extra cocoa-based items the next time you go shopping. Anyone who can't even consider doing nacho night without a can of jalapenos to sprinkle on top would be wise to start a small collection now. Recently, domestic jalapeno production has gone down, so most of the canned jalapenos you buy feature peppers brought to the US directly from Mexico. So there's definitely potential for a price jump that could get real spicy real quick.
It's not so bad.
Yeah. It's more tingly than hot.
Yeah.
Red peppers are also brought in from Mexico, so the canned and jarred versions of those are also vulnerable to hiked costs. If you deliberately start picking up cans of your favorite peppers now, it will ensure you have a steady supply without needing to overpay down the line. This version will last much longer than fresh peppers would, while providing you the same vibrant flavors for your homemade soups and sauces. Roasted red peppers in oil may seem like a luxury at the moment, but if you have a taste for them, get them now before the numbers roll even higher and that luxury status makes them too precious to afford at all. Also keep in mind that a lot of spices like chili powder and paprika are made with, you guessed it, peppers, so there could be a trickle-down effect on pricing for more products than you think. In truth, some of the products on this list are a bit more predictable than others. Canned foods that get imported from other countries, that's nearly a given, since we depend on foreign trade to access them. But even the products the US manufactures domestically could easily see increased prices as well. For one thing, if steel prices increase, that will likely affect the cost of canned products across the board. And that principle applies to pretty much everything, even if it's not edible. US farmers who grow crops used in domestic canned foods will also encounter increases for things like equipment, machinery, and fertilizer manufactured outside the US. Farmers who pay more to farm but end up seeing reduced sales are likely to increase their prices just to keep their operations afloat, and those numbers will surely trickle down to the consumer level in short order. Even if you can't afford to do a supermarket sweep on all these canned goods, it's worth it to be aware of what may come. Just a few extra cans per shopping trip add up over time.